What the hell are you doing up here?
The woman in the yellow, four-striped uniform calmly replied,
I am the captain. Are you deaf? This is not a place for jokes.
The flight attendant stepped closer. Her nose wrinkled, as if she smelled something rotten.
A terrible stench. It smells like garbage! People like you don't even deserve to sit in economy class.
Get out before I have someone drag you off this plane!
The woman didn't raise her voice. She didn't even blink.
I am Captain Brianna Johnson, your pilot today.
The flight attendant's lips curled into a contemptuous smile.
My pilot? How ridiculous.
She yelled,
Security! Get this woman off my plane!
The flight attendant didn't know that the woman she had just humiliated could cancel 300 flights with just one phone call. Let me take you back. 2 hours before any of that happened. Charlotte, North Carolina, 4:15 in the morning. The world was still asleep. Not even the birds had started yet. Brianna Johnson's alarm didn't buzz. It never needed to. 18 years of flying had turned her body into its own clock. Her eyes opened in the dark. No groaning, no snooze button, just up. She sat on the edge of the bed for a moment. The hardwood floor was cold under her bare feet. The house smelled like the lavender candle she'd forgotten to blow out last night. A thin trail of smoke still curled from the wick on her nightstand. She padded down the hallway past a wall of photographs. Her graduation from the Naval Academy. 20-year-old Brianna, grinning so hard her cheeks hurt. A shot of her standing beside an F/A-18 on a carrier deck. Helmet under her arm, the Pacific stretching out behind her like blue glass. A handshake with the Chief of Naval Operations. Each frame a chapter. Each chapter earned in sweat, discipline, and sleepless nights. The bathroom light flickered on. She brushed her teeth, tied her hair back, and stood in front of the mirror. There was a yellow sticky note on the glass. She'd written it years ago. The ink was fading, but the words weren't. Fly like they're watching. Lead like they're not. She ironed her uniform the same way she always did. Crisp lines down the sleeves, not a single wrinkle. She polished her shoes until the leather caught the light. Then she clipped her captain's wings to her chest, 4 gold stripes on each shoulder, and looked at herself one more time. 3,000 flights, 18 years, and it still mattered. She drove to the airport with the windows cracked. The morning air was cool and damp. Jazz played low on the stereo. Coltrane, something soft. She called her mother on speakerphone. They laughed about her nephew's school play. He'd played a tree. Apparently, he was the best tree anyone had ever seen. Her mother's laugh was warm and loud and exactly what a Monday morning needed. A normal morning. A peaceful morning. The last peaceful moment she'd have all day. Charlotte Douglas International Airport, 6:45 a.m., Monday. The terminal was already humming. Rolling suitcases clattered across tile floors, the smell of Starbucks mixed with jet fuel from the tarmac. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting that flat, pale glow that makes every airport in America feel the same. Somewhere behind the counters, a baby was crying. The ordinary rhythm of air travel. Gate B14, Flight 1128, Charlotte to Washington Dulles. Scheduled departure, 7:30 a.m. Full flight, 142 passengers, business commuters with leather briefcases, families wrestling strollers, a couple of college kids in oversized hoodies. The gate agent scanned boarding passes with the mechanical rhythm of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. Brianna walked through the terminal with her flight bag clicking behind her. She nodded at a TSA officer she recognized, waved at a gate agent 2 gates over. She'd flown out of Charlotte so many times, the airport felt like a second home. She turned the corner toward B14. The jet bridge was connected. Boarding had begun. Her aircraft was waiting. But someone else was waiting too. Pamela Davis had been on board for 20 minutes already. Senior lead flight attendant. 20 years with Atlantic Ridge Airlines. She stood at the front of the cabin like she owned it. Clipboard in hand, reading glasses perched on her nose, mouth set in a permanent line of disapproval. Pamela ran her cabin like a kingdom. Every tray table, every overhead bin, every seatbelt, her domain. 2 decades of seniority had hardened her into something brittle and sharp. She didn't manage her crew, she controlled them. A young black gate agent stepped on board to hand Pamela the updated manifest. Pamela snatched it without looking up. "This is the wrong format. Again." Her voice was flat and cutting, loud enough for row 2 to hear. "How many times do I have to explain this? Is it really that complicated for you?" The gate agent's jaw tightened. Her fingers curled at her sides. She said nothing. She turned and walked back up the jet bridge. Her eyes were wet before she reached the terminal. Pamela didn't notice, or didn't care. She'd been told the captain would arrive shortly. She hadn't been given a name, hadn't been given a photo, hadn't asked for either. She had no idea who was about to walk through that door. Brianna stepped onto the jet bridge. The air changed immediately. That familiar smell, recycled cabin air mixed with industrial carpet and hydraulic fluid. She'd breathed it 3,000 times. It smelled like work. It smelled like home. Her heels clicked against the metal floor. The walls hummed faintly, the vibration of the aircraft's auxiliary power unit running beneath her feet. She could see the wing of her aircraft through the small window at the bend of the bridge. Her aircraft. She reached the door. Pamela was standing just inside, clipboard pressed against her chest like a shield. The galley light cast a yellow glow across the narrow entrance. The scent of cheap airline coffee mixed with Pamela's heavy floral perfume. Brianna smiled. The kind of smile you give a colleague on a Monday morning. "Good morning, Captain Johnson checking in." Pamela looked at her. Not a glance, a full scan. Eyes starting at Brianna's face, drifting down to her uniform, pausing at the stripes on her shoulders, then climbing back up. Slow, deliberate, the way someone inspects a stain on their furniture. 3 seconds passed. She didn't move, didn't extend a hand. Her lips pressed into a thin, colorless line. "The captain hasn't arrived yet." Brianna kept her voice even, professional. "I am the captain, Brianna Johnson. I'm assigned to 1128 today." Pamela tilted her head, not in curiosity, in disbelief. The kind of tilt people do when a child says something ridiculous. "You're the captain." She repeated it slowly, each word separated, like she was tasting something sour. "Yes, ma'am." Pamela's eyes made the trip down Brianna's body one more time. Hair, face, stripes, shoes, and came back up unsatisfied. She was looking for something wrong, something that would confirm what she'd already decided. Then she stepped further into the doorway, not sideways, forward. Her body filled the frame. She was blocking the entrance now, physically, intentionally. "I don't have you on my crew sheet. Step back into the terminal while I verify this." Brianna reached for her lanyard. Her airline ID hung from it. Photo, name, title in bold letters. Next to it, her FAA Airline Transport Pilot Certificate, the highest certification a pilot can hold. She held both up, steady, patient. "Here's my ID and my ATP certificate. You can verify with ops, but I'd like to access the cockpit while you do. We have a departure window." Pamela's eyes flicked to the badge for half a second, then snapped back. She hadn't read a single word. "Anyone can get a badge printed. I've seen fakes before." This isn't a fake, Pamela. Don't use my name like you know me. Her voice dropped cold. I said I need to verify. Are you having trouble understanding me? Do I need to speak slower? A man in seat 1A looked up from his Wall Street Journal. A woman in 2C stopped adjusting her overhead bag and stared. The cabin had gone quieter. The kind of quiet that happens when people sense something is wrong. Brianna tried once more, firm, polite, measured. Pamela, you can absolutely call operations, but FAA protocol requires you to allow the assigned pilot in command access to the flight deck. We're already behind schedule. Something snapped behind Pamela's eyes. Don't you dare lecture me on protocol. Her voice rose. She wanted the cabin to hear it. I've been flying for 20 years. 20. I was working these cabins before you probably finished high school. She took a half step closer. Brianna could smell her breath. Coffee and peppermint. I am the lead crew member on this aircraft, and I am telling you, you are not getting past me until I say so. Is that clear enough for you? Brianna said nothing. Her jaw tightened, but her hands stayed still. Her breathing didn't change. 18 years of military and commercial aviation had taught her one thing. The person who loses composure loses everything. Then Pamela reached for the intercom, not to call operations, not to verify anything. She picked up the handset and spoke with calm, rehearsed authority. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief security concern at the front of the aircraft. Please remain in your seats. The situation is being handled. Security concern. The word rippled through the cabin like ice water. Heads turned, conversations died. A man in row 8 craned his neck. 3 phones came out of 3 pockets. The cabin air thickened. Brianna felt it. That shift. One word. Security. And suddenly, she wasn't a captain at her own cockpit door. She was a suspect. A threat. Something to be handled. Pamela hung up the intercom and looked at Brianna with the faintest smile. The smile of someone who knows they just changed the game. Then Derek Moore appeared at the jet bridge behind Brianna. First officer, 42 years old, former Air Force. His uniform pressed sharp, wings pin gleaming. He was also black. He took one look at the scene and understood immediately. Pamela, that's Captain Johnson. She's the PIC today. Let her through. Pamela's eyes slid to Derek. The same scan, head to toe, that same flicker of something ugly behind her expression. I don't take orders from you either. This isn't an order. It's a fact. Her name is on the crew sheet. Check it. I said I'm verifying. Both of you, step back. Derek opened his mouth again, but Brianna placed a hand on his forearm. Light, quiet, not yet. Let her keep going. Pamela turned back toward the cabin. She straightened her apron, smoothed her hair, and spoke. Not to Brianna, not to Derek, but to the passengers. Loud, clear, theatrical. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, folks. We're just making sure the right people are in the right places today. The right people in the right places. She didn't say the word. She didn't have to. Every person in that cabin understood exactly what she meant. Some shifted uncomfortably. Some looked at their phones. A woman in 3C pulled her son closer. And one man, seat 1A, gray suit, silver watch, actually nodded his approval. Then airport security arrived. A white officer named Craig walked up the jet bridge, mid-30s, buzz cut, radio crackling on his hip. He looked like every airport security officer in every airport in America. Pamela's posture changed instantly. Relief washed over her face. Thank God you're here. She pointed at Brianna the way someone points at a stray dog. This woman is attempting to access the cockpit without authorization. I need her removed immediately. Craig looked at Brianna's uniform, at the 4 gold stripes. He hesitated. Ma'am, can I see your credentials? Brianna handed them over, calmly, for the second time in 5 minutes. Her ID, her ATP certificate, everything in order, everything matching. Craig studied them. His eyes moved between the photo and her face. They matched. He opened his mouth to speak, but Pamela didn't let him. She stepped forward. Her voice cracked like a whip. I don't care what that badge says. I've been flying for 20 years, and I have never seen this woman before. She does not belong here. Her face was flushed. A vein pulsed at her temple. Her finger jabbed toward the jet bridge. Get her out! Get her out of here! Now! The entire first-class cabin heard every syllable. The businessman in 2A set his newspaper down. The mother in 3C covered her son's ears. A teenage girl in 4B raised her phone, camera pointed forward. And Sandra Coleman, a junior flight attendant standing near row 5 with wide, horrified eyes, slipped her phone from her apron pocket. She pressed record. The red light blinked. The camera was steady, and it captured everything. What happened next still makes my skin crawl. Craig stood there, holding Brianna's credentials, 2 forms of valid identification, photo match, name match, everything legitimate. Any reasonable person would have handed them back, apologized, and stepped aside. But Pamela wasn't interested in reasonable. She reached across Craig, physically reached across his chest, and snatched Brianna's badge right off her neck. The lanyard pulled tight against Brianna's skin for 1 sharp second before the clasp snapped. The sound was small, a tiny click of breaking plastic, but in the silence of that galley, it sounded like a gunshot. Passengers in the first 3 rows gasped. One woman covered her mouth. A child in row 3 whispered, "Mommy, what's happening?" Pamela held the badge up between 2 fingers. She tilted it back and forth under the galley light like she was examining a piece of cheap jewelry at a flea market. Her lip curled. Then she tossed it onto the galley counter next to the coffee pot. It slid across the metal surface and stopped against a stack of napkins. This doesn't prove anything. She said it like she was bored, like the whole thing was beneath her, like Brianna was beneath her. Brianna looked down at her neck. A faint red line crossed her skin where the lanyard had pulled. She didn't touch it. She didn't rub it. She just looked at it for a moment, and then looked back up. Her voice was low, controlled, every word a brick laid carefully on top of the last. You just put your hands on a crew member, on an active aircraft. That is a federal offense, Pamela. Pamela laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an awkward laugh, a real laugh. The kind of laugh that comes from someone who genuinely believes they are untouchable. The kind that echoes off metal walls and settles into your chest like something cold. Federal offense? Sweetheart, you are not crew until I say you're crew, and I haven't said it. I won't be saying it. She turned to Craig. Why is she still standing here? I asked you to remove her 5 minutes ago. Do your job. Craig shifted his weight from one foot to the other. His hand rested on his radio, but he didn't key it. His eyes kept drifting back to Brianna's uniform, to the stripes, to the wings pin on her chest. Something was wrong, and he could feel it in his gut. But Pamela's confidence was louder than his doubt. 20 years of seniority has a sound. It sounds like certainty. Ma'am, he he said to Brianna. His voice was apologetic but firm. "Could you step off the aircraft for a moment, just until we get this sorted out?" Brianna looked at Craig. She looked at his hand on the radio. She looked at Pamela, who was already smiling again, that satisfied, territorial smile. The smile of a woman who had just won something she didn't deserve to win. "Of course," Brianna said quietly. "I'll be on the jet bridge." She didn't storm off. She didn't slam anything. She simply turned, picked up her flight bag, and walked back through the aircraft door. Her footsteps were even. Her posture was straight. Not a single person watching would have known that her heart was hammering so hard she could feel her pulse in her fingertips. The jet bridge was cold. Not the comfortable kind of cold, the hollow, industrial kind that seeps through your clothes and settles into your bones. The fluorescent light overhead buzzed with a faint electrical whine. A draft leaked in from somewhere near the floor, carrying the smell of rain and exhaust from the tarmac below. Through the scratched window she could see the terminal. Passengers walking, laughing, buying magazines. Normal people having a normal morning. She stood there, alone. Her badge was still on the galley counter. Her lanyard was broken. Her credentials had been examined, handled, tossed aside like trash. And she'd been asked to leave her own aircraft by a security officer who couldn't look her in the eye. Through the aircraft window, she could see Pamela. The woman was smoothing her apron, adjusting the collar of her blouse, smiling at the first-class passengers with the warm, professional charm she'd been withholding for the last 10 minutes. She said something to the man in 1A. He chuckled. Then, and this part still makes me want to throw my phone at the wall, he gave her a small round of applause. Just him. 2 hands clapping together softly, like she'd done something brave. Like she'd just protected everyone on that plane from danger. Pamela soaked it in. She practically curtsied. Brianna watched it all from the other side of the glass. Alone. Standing in a cold metal tube, holding a flight bag, wearing 4 gold stripes that apparently meant nothing to anyone on the other side of that door. She stood there for 11 minutes. She didn't cry. She didn't call anyone. She didn't pace. She just stood there, breathing slowly, the way she'd been taught to breathe before carrier landings in the Navy. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Slow, controlled, steady. Because if you lose your composure at 30,000 feet, people die. And Brianna Johnson never lost her composure. Then Derek came out. He pushed through the aircraft door and walked straight to her. His face was tight. His hands were balled into fists at his sides. A vein stood out on his neck. He looked like a man trying very hard not to break something with his bare hands. "This is insane, Brianna. I'm calling Gregory. Right now. This ends now." Brianna held up one hand, palm out, calm. "Not yet." "Not yet? She just—" "I know what she did, Derek. Every bit of it. Let her finish digging." Derek stared at her. He opened his mouth, closed it. Then he exhaled, long, slow through his teeth, and leaned against the jet bridge wall beside her. The metal groaned under his weight. "How are you this calm?" "I'm not calm, Derek." She looked at him. Her eyes were steady, but there was something burning behind them. Something patient and hot, like embers waiting for wind. "I'm strategic." She pulled out her personal phone, opened the Atlantic Ridge Airlines Internal Operations app, tapped into the crew scheduling module for Flight 1128. And there it was, right there on the screen, in black letters on a white background, plain as daylight. P I.C. Johnson, Brianna A., Captain. She screenshotted it. Then she scrolled down to the cabin crew assignments, found Pamela's name, screenshotted that too. Then she opened the timestamps, when the schedule was published, when it was confirmed, when Pamela would have received her briefing packet with the captain's name on it. Screenshot, screenshot, screenshot. Every piece of evidence, every digital receipt. Saved, cataloged, organized, ready. Derek watched her work. A slow smile crept across his face. Not a happy smile, a knowing one. The kind of smile a man gets when he realizes the person next to him is 10 moves ahead in a chess game nobody else knows is being played. She has no idea, does she? None whatsoever. Back inside the aircraft, the situation wasn't getting better. It was getting managed, and that was worse. A gate supervisor named Todd Wilson arrived. White, mid-40s, thinning hair, sweat already beading on his forehead, despite the air conditioning blasting from the overhead vents. Pamela had called him before Craig even arrived. She'd gotten to him first. She'd already built the narrative, already laid the foundation. Todd, thank God. Pamela intercepted him at the aircraft door, her hand on his arm. Familiar, conspiratorial. Her voice dropped to a low, concerned whisper, the voice of someone sharing a secret. We've had an unauthorized individual attempt to access the cockpit. I handled it. Security is here. But I need you to make sure she's removed from the gate area entirely, for the safety of our passengers. Todd nodded. He didn't ask questions. He didn't ask for another perspective. He walked out to the jet bridge where Brianna was standing. He looked at her uniform. He looked at the stripes. He looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, I'm the gate supervisor. Can you tell me what's going on here? Brianna didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't tell her side of the story. She simply held up her phone, crew assignment glowing on the screen, and handed him her airline ID and FAA certificate with her other hand. Todd looked at the phone. He looked at the ID. He looked at the certificate. His face went from pink to white in under 3 seconds. The color drained out of him like water from a cracked glass. He turned back toward the aircraft door. His voice had changed, sharper now, urgent. Pamela, you need to come out here, now. Pamela's voice floated from inside the cabin, casual, unbothered, almost cheerful. I'm preparing for departure, Todd. Tell her to take another flight. Tell her to take another flight. The captain of the aircraft, the pilot in command, told to take another flight by a flight attendant who refused to look at her badge. Todd stood in the doorway, trapped. A senior attendant who wouldn't listen on one side, a senior captain who had every right to be furious on the other. His radio crackled. A voice from operations asked about the delay. He didn't answer. He didn't know what to say. Because Flight 1128 was now 22 minutes past its scheduled departure. The delay board at gate B14 flickered once, then refreshed. Delayed. The passengers saw it. Some groaned. Some pulled out their phones to check connections. A man in row 12 muttered something about missing his meeting. A woman near the back called her office to say she'd be late. And Brianna Johnson stood on the jet bridge, still waiting, still watching, still holding her phone with its screen full of screenshots. But she wasn't waiting for permission anymore. She was waiting for the right moment. And it had just arrived. Brianna stepped away from the jet bridge door. She walked 5 paces toward the terminal, away from Todd, away from Craig, away from the aircraft where Pamela Davis was still smoothing her apron and smiling at passengers like nothing had happened. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her contacts, found the name she was looking for. Gregory Adams, Vice President of Operations, Atlantic Ridge Airlines. She pressed call. He picked up on the second ring. Brianna, you're on 1128 today, right? I see a delay flag on the board. What's going on? Brianna spoke the way she filed flight reports. Calm, clinical, no emotion, just facts. Gregory, I arrived at the aircraft at approximately 6:50 a.m. in full uniform with proper credentials. The lead flight attendant, Pamela Davis, refused to allow me access to the cockpit. She questioned my identity. She physically removed my badge from my neck, breaking the lanyard in the process. She announced a security concern over the cabin intercom. She called airport security and demanded I be removed from my own aircraft. My first officer, Derek Moore, confirmed my identity. She refused to acknowledge him as well. The gate supervisor has now seen my credentials and confirmed my assignment. Pamela Davis has still not yielded. She told the gate supervisor to, and I'm quoting, "Tell me to take another flight." Silence on the line. The kind of silence that has weight. Brianna could hear Gregory breathing. She could hear the faint hum of his office in the background. A clock ticking somewhere. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Lower. Tighter. The voice of a man who has just realized exactly how much trouble his airline is in. Are you telling me a flight attendant physically removed credentials from the neck of my chief of flight safety? Yes, sir. On a loaded aircraft, in front of passengers. Yes, sir. Multiple passengers. At least 2 were filming. Another silence, longer this time. Brianna, he paused. You know what authority you have. You don't need my permission. I know I don't, but I want you to hear it from me first. She paused, took one breath. I'm grounding her, effective immediately. But I'm not stopping there. I'm issuing a safety stand-down for every aircraft Pamela Davis has touched in the last 90 days. She heard Gregory's chair creak. She heard him sit forward. How many flights is that? Brianna had already checked. She'd checked while standing alone on that freezing jet bridge for 11 minutes, while Pamela was smiling, while the man in 1A was clapping. Over 300. Gregory exhaled, a long, slow exhale, the kind that carries the weight of a decision that will make national news. Do it. Brianna hung up. She stood still for 3 seconds. Then she walked back to the gate podium. The gate agent, the same young black woman Pamela had snapped at earlier, looked up at her with wide, uncertain eyes. I need the OCC line, Brianna said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried something new now. Something that made the gate agent stand up straighter, without knowing why. Brianna picked up the landline, dialed the Atlantic Ridge Airlines Operations Control Center. The phone rang once. OCC, this is dispatch. This is Captain Brianna Johnson, Chief of Flight Safety, Employee ID Alpha Bravo 4452. I am issuing an immediate crew safety stand-down, effective for all flights staffed by lead flight attendant Pamela Davis within the last 90 days. Authorization under FAA safety order pending formal review. Confirm receipt. The line was quiet for 4 seconds. She could hear typing. Fast typing. Copy, Captain Johnson. Verifying authority. More typing. A pause. Authority confirmed. Initiating ground stop protocol. Preliminary count, approximately 312 flights affected across the eastern seaboard. Confirmed. Log the time. Johnson out. She hung up the phone. And across the eastern seaboard, Charlotte, Washington Dulles, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Boston, Jacksonville. Departure boards began to flicker, one by one, gate by gate, airport by airport. Delayed. Delayed. 312 flights, thousands of passengers, dozens of gates, all frozen. All because one woman decided that a captain didn't look the way a captain was supposed to look. Back on the aircraft, Pamela felt her phone buzz. She glanced at it. A notification from the crew app. Then another. Then another. Then her phone didn't stop buzzing. It vibrated against the galley counter like something alive. She picked it up. Her eyes scanned the screen. Her face changed. The color left it one shade at a time. Pink to pale to gray. Todd Wilson appeared at the aircraft door. His voice was different now. No hesitation, no politeness. Pamela, come to the gate, now. That is not a request. Pamela walked out of the aircraft on stiff legs. She stepped onto the jet bridge. She turned the corner toward the terminal. And there was Brianna, standing at the gate podium, phone in one hand, badge reclipped to her chest. Craig had retrieved it from the galley counter and returned it with an apology she didn't acknowledge. 4 gold stripes catching the fluorescent light. Todd spoke first. His voice carried across the gate area. Passengers waiting in the terminal turned to watch. Pamela, this is Captain Brianna Johnson. She is not just the pilot assigned to Flight 1128. She is the Chief of Flight Safety for Atlantic Ridge Airlines. She has the authority to ground every aircraft in our fleet. And she just shut down over 300 flights because of what you did. Pamela's mouth opened. Her lips moved. No sound came out. Her clipboard slipped from her fingers and hit the carpet with a soft, pathetic thud. The gate area was silent. 30, maybe 40 people watching. Several phones raised. Several cameras recording. Brianna looked directly at Pamela. Not with anger, not with triumph. With something worse. Something quieter. She said 5 words. I told you who I was. Nobody moved. The gate area held its breath. 40 pairs of eyes locked on the 2 women standing 10 feet apart. The only sound was the low hum of the terminal. Distant announcements, rolling suitcases, the muffled roar of a plane taxiing outside. Pamela stood frozen. Her clipboard lay on the carpet at her feet. Her hands hung at her sides, opening and closing around nothing. Her mouth still trying to form words that wouldn't come. Then they came. All at once, tumbling out like someone had knocked over a shelf. This is a misunderstanding, her voice cracked. I was following protocol. I was protecting the aircraft. That's what we're trained to do. That's what 20 years of experience looks like. Nobody responded. I didn't know who she was. Nobody told me. Nobody sent me a photo. This isn't my fault. She looked at Todd. Todd looked at the floor. She looked at Craig. Craig took a step backward. She turned to the passengers at the gate, the ones with phones raised. She tried the warm smile, the one that had worked on the man in 1A. It didn't work anymore. Can we just sit down and talk about this, please? I think if we... Pamela. Brianna's voice cut clean through the noise. Quiet. Final. Your union rep will be in touch. 7 words, and then silence. Brianna turned back to the podium. She was done with this conversation. Pamela leaned against the jet bridge wall. Her fingers pulled at her collar like it was too tight. Her breathing went shallow, fast, the breathing of someone who just realized the ground beneath her feet was no longer solid. Craig approached carefully. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me. Come with you where? I haven't done anything. Ma'am, please. His radio crackled. A voice confirmed airline management was en route. Pamela heard it. Whatever fight she had left drained out of her like air from a punctured tire. She didn't speak again. 90 minutes later, Gregory Adams walked through the terminal doors. He'd driven from the airline's regional headquarters in uptown Charlotte. He'd spent the drive on the phone with legal, communications, and the FAA liaison. By the time he reached gate B14, he knew everything. Tall man, 55, silver hair. The kind of executive who wore authority the way other people wore cologne. You sensed it before you saw it. He didn't greet Pamela, didn't ask her side, didn't offer the professional courtesy of pretending this was complicated. Pamela Davis, you are immediately suspended from all duties pending a full investigation by Internal Affairs and the Federal Aviation Administration. Your airline credentials are confiscated. Your access badge is deactivated, effective now. He held out his hand, palm up. Pamela's fingers trembled as she unclipped her airline ID from her blouse, then her access badge, then her crew card. Each one removed like a piece of armor being stripped away. Gregory handed everything to a security officer behind him. Escort Ms. Davis to her vehicle. She is not to re-enter this terminal. Pamela walked between two security officers through the terminal, past the Starbucks, past the magazine stand, past the TSA checkpoint where officers watched her go. Her heels clicked against the tile floor, the same floor Brianna had walked across 2 hours earlier, confident and ready to fly. Pamela's walk sounded different, hollow, uneven. The walk of someone leaving a place they would never return to. She didn't look back. 2 hours behind schedule, Flight 1128 pushed back from gate B14. Brianna sat in the left seat, Derek in the right. Through the cockpit windshield, the runway stretched out, long and gray, under a pale morning sky. Brianna keyed the cabin intercom. Her voice filled the aircraft. Warm, steady, professional. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain, Brianna Johnson. I apologize for the delay this morning. We're cleared for departure and will have you in Washington shortly. Thank you for your patience. She released the button. The cabin was quiet for a moment. Then the applause started. Not from one person, from everywhere, row after row, seat after seat. 142 passengers clapping for the woman who'd been told she didn't belong on this plane. This time, the applause was for the right person. Sandra Coleman's phone had been recording for 9 minutes and 14 seconds. She didn't know that yet. She didn't know that those 9 minutes were about to change everything. That evening, Sandra sat in her apartment in Charlotte. She watched the video 3 times. Her hands were shaking. She'd never done anything like this before. She was 28 years old, 3 years into her career at Atlantic Ridge Airlines, and she had just filmed her senior colleague committing what appeared to be a federal crime. She uploaded the video to her personal social media account at 8:47 p.m. with one sentence. "This happened on my flight today. Watch the whole thing." By midnight, the video had 200,000 views. By sunrise, it had crossed 2 million. By the following afternoon, it was everywhere. The footage was damning. Crystal clear audio, Pamela's voice cutting through the cabin, "Get her out." The badge snatch, the lanyard snapping, Brianna's face, calm and still as stone, while a woman screamed at her in front of 142 strangers. And the moment that made the internet lose its collective mind. The man in seat 1A, clapping. 2 soft, entitled hands coming together in approval of something ugly. The hashtag came naturally. Nobody planned it, nobody coordinated it. It just appeared, the way these things do when enough people feel the same thing at the same time. Hashtag let her fly. It trended nationally within 12 hours. Nathan Wilson, a 30-year-old reporter at the Charlotte NBC affiliate, broke the story on the 6 o'clock news. He stood in front of Charlotte Douglas International Airport with the terminal glowing behind him. The headline on the screen read, "Airline attendant blocked black captain from cockpit. Captain grounded 300 flights in response." He'd interviewed 3 passengers from Flight 1128. 2 of them used the word disgusting. 1 of them cried on camera. Aviation experts appeared on cable news panels. Civil rights leaders issued statements. A retired airline captain, white, 63 years old, 35 years of experience, went on national television and said he'd never seen anything like it in his entire career. The story didn't fade. It grew. Within 48 hours, Denise Taylor stepped in. FAA Regional Director, 50 years old, 22 years with the Federal Aviation Administration. She had the kind of face that didn't move much. Steady eyes, a jaw that looked like it had been carved from something hard. She didn't give press conferences. She gave orders. She opened a formal investigation into 3 questions. First, whether Pamela Davis's actions constituted interference with a flight crew member under Federal Statute 49 U.S.C. Section 46,504. That's a federal crime, a serious one, the kind that carries up to 20 years in prison. Second, whether Atlantic Ridge Airlines followed its own protocols for crew identification and conflict resolution. Third, whether the airline's training programs adequately addressed implicit bias among senior crew members. Investigators pulled records. They pulled Pamela's personnel file. They pulled complaint histories. They interviewed 17 crew members across 4 bases. And what they found was worse than anyone expected. 3 additional crew members came forward within the first week. Each of them had filed complaints against Pamela Davis in prior years. A black first officer who said Pamela refused to bring him coffee in the cockpit during a 6-hour flight, something she did routinely for white captains. A Latino flight attendant who said Pamela told him his accent made passengers uncomfortable and tried to have him reassigned. A black gate agent, the same young woman Pamela had snapped at the morning of Flight 1128, who said Pamela called her slow in front of passengers on 3 separate occasions. 3 complaints, 3 different people, 3 different years, all filed through the proper channels, all documented, all dismissed. Every single one. Marked in the system as personality conflict, no action required. The airline's internal review confirmed it. Atlantic Ridge Airlines had a procedure for discrimination complaints. The procedure existed on paper. It looked professional. It had flowcharts and escalation paths and designated review officers. And it had failed, completely, systematically, repeatedly, to protect a single person who used it. The airline's CEO, Harold Anderson, stood behind a podium 3 days after the story broke. Camera flashes exploded in front of his face. Microphones bristled from every angle. He read from a prepared statement, but his hands were trembling slightly. He knew what was coming. He acknowledged the failure. He called it unacceptable. He announced immediate reforms, mandatory anti-bias training for all crew members at every level, an independent review board for discrimination complaints staffed by external civil rights professionals, a complete audit of every complaint filed in the previous 5 years, and a formal public apology to Captain Breonna Johnson. He said her name twice. Both times, the room went quiet. The legal consequences came next. They came fast. Federal prosecutors in the Western District of North Carolina charged Pamela Davis with interference with a flight crew member, a federal felony. The indictment described her actions in precise, colorless legal language, but every sentence carried the weight of what the whole country had already seen on video. Pamela's attorney negotiated a plea arrangement. She pleaded guilty to a reduced charge. The judge, a 61-year-old woman named Judge Catherine Moore, accepted the plea, but made it clear during sentencing that she found the conduct deeply troubling. The sentence was firm: 18 months of supervised probation, a permanent lifetime ban from the aviation industry, 200 hours of community service with civil rights organizations, and a $15,000 fine. Pamela stood in the courtroom in a gray blazer, hands folded in front of her. She didn't speak. Her attorney spoke for her. He said she was remorseful and committed to personal growth. The words landed in the courtroom like coins dropped on concrete. Small, hard, unconvincing. The airline reached a separate settlement with Brianna. The terms were confidential. But in a later interview, Brianna made one thing clear. The settlement was never her goal. "I didn't do this for money," she said. "I did this because the next woman who walks onto that jet bridge might not be the chief of flight safety. She might just be a pilot, a new pilot, a young pilot, and she deserves to walk through that door without having to prove she's human first." One last thing. The man in seat 1A, gray suit, silver watch, the one who clapped for Pamela. He was identified in the video within 24 hours. The internet found him the way the internet always does, quickly and without mercy. He posted a public apology on social media. He said he didn't fully understand the situation and deeply regretted his actions. The comment section was not kind. The judge's closing remarks were brief, but one line was quoted in every major newspaper the following day. She said that a cockpit door should be opened by credentials and competence, never closed by prejudice and assumption. That line was printed on posters, shared millions of times, turned into a mural on a wall in downtown Charlotte. And Pamela Davis never set foot on an airplane again. 6 months later, Brianna Johnson's face appeared on the cover of Aviation Weekly. The photograph showed her standing on a tarmac at sunrise, arms folded across her chest, 4 gold stripes catching the orange light. The headline read, "The Captain Who Grounded 300 Flights and Changed an Industry." She didn't ask for the cover. She didn't pitch the story. The magazine called her. Then CNN called. Then the Congressional Subcommittee on Aviation Safety and Workforce Equity called. She testified for 12 minutes. No notes, no teleprompter. She sat behind a microphone in a wood-paneled room in Washington, D.C., and spoke the way she always spoke, clear, measured, unhurried. She talked about the jet bridge, about the 11 minutes she stood alone, about the lanyard snapping against her neck, about the man who clapped. But mostly she talked about the women who would come after her, the ones who didn't have her title, who didn't have her authority, who wouldn't be able to ground 300 flights to make a point. She said those women were the reason she was sitting in that chair, not herself. C-SPAN clips of her testimony went viral. A 16-year-old girl in Oakland watched the full 12 minutes on her phone during lunch break and decided she wanted to be a pilot. She wasn't the only one. Atlantic Ridge Airlines promoted Brianna to Vice President of Safety Culture, a position that didn't exist before she made it necessary. Her first act was to dismantle the old complaint system entirely. Her second act was to build a new one from scratch, transparent, independent, and accountable. Her third act was the one that mattered most to her. She launched a mentorship program called Clear Skies. It was designed for young women of color interested in aviation careers, not just pilots, but engineers, mechanics, air traffic controllers, every role that keeps a plane in the air. The program offered scholarships, flight simulator access, and one-on-one mentorship with working professionals. Applications opened on a Tuesday. By Friday, they had received submissions from all 50 states. Brianna read every single one. One evening, about a month after the magazine cover came out, Brianna drove to her mother's house in East Charlotte. The porch light was on. The screen door was unlocked. The house smelled like pot roast and cornbread, the same smell it had carried since Brianna was 9 years old. Her mother was sitting in the living room. On the wall behind her, Two frames hung side by side. On the left, Brianna's Naval Academy graduation photo. 20 years old, white uniform, proud smile. On the right, the Aviation Weekly cover. Same woman, same pride, 2 decades apart. Her mother looked at the wall, then looked at Brianna. I always knew those wings meant something. Brianna sat down beside her. She didn't say anything for a while. She didn't need to. Some moments don't need words. They just need someone who is there from the beginning. As for Pamela Davis, her aviation career was over, permanently. She attempted to write a blog post portraying herself as the victim of a politically motivated witch hunt. It gained minor traction for about 4 hours before former colleagues, passengers from Flight 1128, and the internet at large dismantled it piece by piece. The airline revoked her retirement benefits pending the outcome of the federal case. Former friends stopped returning her calls. 20 years of seniority dissolved like sugar in hot water. She completed her 200 hours of community service at a cultural awareness center in Charlotte. Near the end, she told a coordinator something quiet, almost a whisper. I didn't realize how deep it went. Whether she meant the bias or the consequences, nobody could say for certain. Maybe she didn't know either. So here's my question, and I really want you to answer it in the comments. If you were standing in that jet bridge, watching someone get blocked from the seat they earned, would you have said something? Or would you have looked away? Drop your answer below. If this story made you feel something, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because we tell stories like this every week. Stories where justice doesn't just happen, it lands.
You know what stays with me? Brianna told her who she was, showed her the badge, showed her the certificate. Everything was right there, and Pamela still said no because she wasn't looking at the credentials. She was looking at the skin, and once she saw that, nothing else mattered. And that happened every day. People will look at you and decide you are not enough before you even get a chance to prove them wrong, not because of what you can do, because of what you look like. And no badge in the world can fix that in their eyes. But here's what I need you to understand. That's not about you, that's about them. Their blindness doesn't erase your ability. Their no doesn't cancel your qualifications. You are still who you are, whether they accept it or not. So stop trying to convince people who refuse to see. Just do your job. Do it so well that the world has no choice but to notice. You don't need their approval. You need your own. Like, share, and subscribe. Real stories, real justice, every week. And remember, the people who refuse to see you today will hear your name tomorrow. Make sure they never forgot it.